Will Apple turn the corner in the second half? Joining us now, Gene Munster, managing partner at Deepwater Asset Management. Gene, it's great to have you on.
Hi, Morgan.
What's it going to take for Apple to rally here?
I think it's going to take optimism that the new Siri is going to crush it. And after WWDC, that was the clear message from senior management. They basically went on a media blitz to tell people, judge our AI chops on what that new Siri is going to look like. And I think that for investors getting more confidence that they're making progress towards that, that's what this year is all about. I would also mention that there's this added benefit, the fact that they've essentially reset the bar. Don't expect anything from us about AI over the next year. The fact that they've reset that bar, I think it really does lower what some of investors' expectations are for Apple and AI the next year. In other words, that low bar, I think, can be positive for the stock in the back half of the year. And I think investors are kind of processing that piece, how much room to give them. There's one other piece that rarely gets talked about, is the iPhone numbers have come down pretty dramatically over the past 6 months. If we rewind to late last year, investors were generally looking for about 6% iPhone growth this year and about 8% next year. Now it's about 1 and 4%. And so, Morgan, when I think about the opportunity for the stock, I think that this can kind of win on two phases. One is just the simple block and tackle of people coming back, buying their iPhones, doing what they do, committed to the Apple platform. I think that should bode well for Apple iPhone numbers, but also kind of some growing anticipation for that new Siri next year.
Meta CTO Andrew Bosworth was on the show with me a week ago, and one of the things we talked about was how aggressively Meta is targeting top AI talent. Does Apple need to do the same here? Would an acquisition go a long way?
It would. Perplexity would be a home run. Essentially, it would give them not only a agentic browser to supercharge what's going on with Safari, but also give them a search product, which is pretty incredible, and the tools to build on top of these other LLMs. So, Morgan, I think it's a huge deal, a huge opportunity for Apple to add this other talent. And the bar is high, but they've got money to spend. They've only spent $10 billion on CapEx. Compare that to 30, 40, 50, 60 billion by the other hyperscalers. So they got room to spend. And I think that's one of the messages you're going to hear from Apple when they report their June quarter, is this kind of commitment to spending more. And to put quickly some perspective on that, is that 10 billion in CapEx that they're going to spend, they spent last year, again, compares to, call it 50 billion for the rest of the hyperscalers. I think that they can move that up to kind of 25 to 50 billion, acquire that Perplexity. That would be a home run, I think, in terms of not only the fundamentals of the business, but also in terms of what it could do to investor psychology. And so I kind of think about that hiring piece. I think this Perplexity is just a really underappreciated opportunity, particularly around what they could do with search and essentially replace Google in that arrangement. That would be a really powerful opportunity in the midst of this FTC pressure around that relationship. And so there's a lot of levers Apple can play. I understand that they haven't delivered. Clearly, they haven't delivered. But if you look at all the tools, they've got time, and I think they've got the resources to really turn the tide around AI.
So mega cap tech ex-Apple, we'll say, has had a very good run here. Does that continue?
I think it does. And at Deepwater, we're of the belief that ultimately that we're still in the very early stages of AI. I just want to put some quick context. I think that the mega caps are going to continue to do well. I think the real outperformance in the back half of the year is going to come from some smaller names. And if we use a benchmark, the LOUP, which is it's our Frontier Tech ETF, as a benchmark of kind of the sub $500 billion companies, just over the past 3 weeks, that's up 7%, outperforming the Mag 7, which is up 6, and the NASDAQ up 3. So, Morgan, I think investors can sleep well at night owning these big companies, but also kind of think about shifting to some of these smaller cap ones that are capitalizing on what still is early stages of AI. Hard to believe, but I still think we are in the nascent phases, and I think these small companies are going to have an outsized benefit.